All right, slide number 3. We are going to start talking about, remember last time we had said that you have some ATP in the cells, and so that'll provide energy for muscles. And then we had said that we have some creatine phosphate in cells, and that can be used to regenerate some more ATP. But then beyond that, we said, what do you have to do? You have to break down macromolecules to produce more ATP. And so we had said that we have this process of breaking down a molecule that is called catabolism. And on slide number 3, we have a little diagram which is showing C6H12O6 plus oxygen will produce 6 carbon dioxides plus water plus energy, which is used to make ATP. So that is the formula for cellular respiration. And this is what's going to be happening in the cell, and also for most of the ATP in the mitochondria. And so we have these multiple steps that are going to occur. So if you look up here, I want you to look at that thing. I know it doesn't look like much, but if you count the balls, count the little black balls, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Hey, that's just like that formula. 6 carbons. We're going to be saying, we're going to play the game, follow the carbons. And we'll also be saying, follow the electrons. And we'll be saying, we're going to be adding phosphate to ADP, right? Remember we had said with creatine phosphate, we had said it can have a phosphate added to an ADP, and that will make an ATP. Now, when you add a phosphate, that's called phosphorylation. So what do we have? We have 3, at the bottom of this slide, we say oxidation, phosphorylation, decarboxylation. That's what I just was mentioning, those 3 in a slightly different order. So when you remove an electron, that is called oxidation. We are going to be following high energy electrons. The electrons, remember from the subcellular particles and all that, we had said the energy that is found in an atom is in the electrons. And we had said electrons can be low energy, they can be high energy. And it just so happens that those electrons that we're talking about picked up some energy from the sun. Because where did your sugar come from? Sugar cane, a plant. The plant captured some sunlight energy in electrons and put it into that sugar, and now your body is going to take that excess energy from that high energy electron and use it to make ATP, to phosphorylate an ADP, add a phosphate to an ADP. So how do you get those electrons? You gotta rip that 6 carbon molecule to pieces. And that is what we're going to be talking about. So on this slide, the very first green word, I seem to like green today, the very first word in green is called glycolysis. And you might remember from an earlier lecture that we had said lysis means bursting or breaking, and glucose. So the very first step in this process of ripping the sugar molecule apart, releasing its carbons so that you can get at those high energy electrons, the very first step in that is going to be something called glycolysis. And so what we're going to be doing when we talk about ripping this molecule apart, we're going to be following the carbons, decarboxylation, okay? So up here, there it is, 6 carbon molecule. And in glycolysis, this 6-carbon molecule becomes 2 3-carbon molecules. And those 3-carbon molecules are called pyruvate. Now, just this process of ripping that thing in half, glycolysis, results in the production of 2 ATP. It actually results in the production of 4 ATP, but you had to add some energy in there. So the net ATP yield is 2. So you've got, all of a sudden, we're already making some ATP. Now, in the end, when we finally are talking about all those electrons and getting that high energy from those electrons and converting them into low, bland, regular garden variety, low energy electrons, in the end, those low energy electrons, they have to go somewhere. And they're going to go to oxygen. And that's way ahead. So we're not really thinking about it right now, but they will eventually go to oxygen. And so, oh shoot, I lost my train of thought. So let me see. So they're going to eventually go to oxygen. So I picked it back up like that. So what's going to happen is, so in order to go through this really complicated procedure, you got to have some place, you've got to have oxygen, or this whole thing shuts down. If you don't have oxygen available to pick up all these electrons that you're releasing in this process, the whole darn process shuts down. And so what you're left with is just that first part right there. So the first part, it happens even without oxygen. So when we talk about anaerobic respiration, or also known as, AKA, it's like an alias, anaerobic fermentation. So with anaerobic respiration or fermentation, you don't have the oxygen, so the whole process kind of shuts down if you don't have oxygen. But you end up producing a little bit of ATP and these 2 3-carbon molecules. Now, in you and I, those things start building up, right? And so they end up being converted into lactic acid, and we already talked about how that's you feel it as burning in your muscles. If you were a microbe, that 3-carbon molecule would be converted into a 2-carbon ethyl alcohol, and it would release the CO2. And so when we talk about brewmasters or people who make booze, they're foamy, right? When you make beer or wine or whatever through fermentation, you get foam. That's that CO2. That is a secondary decarboxylation that occurs. We don't talk about it here because we're people. We're not microbes. So anyway, so in the absence of oxygen, you get just a little bit of energy. If you have oxygen available, we can continue with all this fun that you see written on the board. And so we've been going almost 9 minutes, so I'm gonna stop right here, and we're gonna come back to this and pick it up from right there. We've already talked about that, right? That was glycolysis that split that thing in half. Now we're going to see what happens to those 3-carbon pyruvates if there is oxygen and they can go to the mitochondria and do all of this wonderful stuff. Okay, I'll be right back.